Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode with Sean, the sports dietitian. Today, we're going to talk about what fluid options to use at what time, specifically for activity, anytime during the day, or what are going to be some of our poorer quality or lower quality fluids we need to pay attention to. So, first and foremost, let's start with options we want to try to limit or avoid. Now, if you're looking at some of the pictures that are on specific slide in the bottom right corner, we have got things like soda, lemonades, sweet teas, energy drinks. We're going to go over specifically what do these things offer and why are they lower quality options that we want to try to limit or avoid. Now, again, it's inevitable. Athletes are going to drink some of these sometimes, and that's one thing we have to obviously just realize, like, it's going to happen. But we also want to recognize that these aren't going to be the best quality things for our body when it comes to hydrating, recovering, or appropriately fueling or getting us the right electrolytes that we need for the activity that we're doing. So if you specifically look at teas, lemonades, soft drinks, what it boils down to, they provide you water and they're loaded with a lot of extra sugar. Now, there's no vitamins, there's no minerals, there's no fiber, there's no other consistent macronutrients like healthy fats or protein. So it really is a very low nutrient value. It doesn't offer us a lot of other things. If you look at also our energy drinks, a lot of your energy drinks, unless it's specifically Red Bull, which is now NSF certified because it has the specific amount of caffeine in it, 200 milligrams specifically. A lot of these energy drinks also have all these different random ingredients. We don't know what they are, what they do. And they're also going to have very high levels of sugar as well. And then they're going to have, at times, some very crazy amounts of caffeine. And some athletes at sometimes may not know that they have some underlying heart conditions or concerns. And then, you're dosing and downing all these high levels of caffeine. One, that could possibly cause a cardiovascular issue if you have an underlying issue. And then two, right, caffeine can have an ergogenic effect or a positive effect on our training. But when we go too far with the amount of caffeine that we have at one specific time, that could lead to jitteriness, anxiousness, right? And just overall feeling like, oh my God, I'm about to like jump and explode. And sometimes when you're having those feelings and those emotions during that time, when you're going to go into a game or when you're going to go into a practice or a lift, there can be that overexcitement factor, that jittery factor, which could cause you to make some really easy physical and mental mistakes. Like, for example, if you're looking on the court and you're going on the court and you're all jittery and anxious, right? You might start chucking up the ball and you're not focusing on your mechanics. You're not focusing, concentrating on the people around you because you have this feeling and sensation that's maybe you have to tame yourself down. It might take a quarter, a whole half, maybe it lasts the whole game and you really can't calm yourself down. And when you're in those situations, like you want to be calm and control physically and mentally to be able to do the tasks that you have to do in that specific moment during that specific time. So again, you have a lemonade once in a while, not a big deal. You have a tea once in a while, not a big deal, but it shouldn't be the first thing you should go for every single time, especially if you're somebody who's trying to work on body composition, right? If we're loading a bunch of added extra sugars from these sugary drinks, that can make that a challenge. And then also eating a lot of excess added sugars, all right, is different from real sugar. So for example, if I have an iced tea, they added sugar to the tea to make it sweet. If I have an orange, the orange has fiber, it's got quick carbs, but also has vitamins and minerals. So that orange is going to be a lot more nutrient dense and provide me a lot more things than specifically that iced tea or that lemonade would. Now, there is lots of sugar-free or lower sugar options that you can choose from that taste like tea or taste like lemonade or taste like a lot of these different flavors that we want from some of these sugary drinks, but doesn't have all the extra calories that's added on into it. So there's definitely those options you can grab, squeeze, or pour into your bottled water or your cup of water. That could be a great alternative that tastes like those options that you love, but don't have all the negative effects of the extra added sugar that comes along with it. As we transition from poor quality to the middle pictures, you can see these are things you can drink any or all times of the day, right? Water, never going to be a bad time to drink that. You should be consistently trying to get some type of water source in throughout the day. Milk is going to be a really good option as well. The percentage of the fat of milk, whether it's whole, 2%, 1%, is going to depend on what your goals, right? If you're a person that's trying to take in a lot of calories, which most athletes are, you're probably going to want to go with a 2% or a whole milk. Maybe you're a guy that's trying to maintain his weight, maybe lose a little bit of weight. You might go for a 2 or 1%. Now, honestly, realistically, if you look at the amount of calories, that's 1% to a whole milk, it's probably like 50 calories. So in reality, is it really a big deal? Not very much. If the milk tastes good and gets you to drink it, and we're getting those key nutrients that milk provides, which is vitamin D, calcium, protein, carbohydrates, potassium, it's just packed, nutrient packed with a lot of those things that are going to help fuel you, recover you, and give you those key nutrients. Also, specifically, that's important for your bones, which again is vitamin D, calcium. And then we've seen through a lot of the recent research with everything coming out with COVID and your immune system that vitamin D also plays a really important part with that. Vitamin D is typically mostly found in getting sun exposure on a regular basis outside, and then taking in, a frequent amount of dairy sources. But if you deal with lactose intolerant and you're in a sport or in a job where you're constantly inside all the time, you don't get a lot of sun exposure, it may be very challenging to get those things in. So whether it's alternative milk options, whether it's foods that are fortified with vitamin D, for example, like some of your juices, specifically an orange juice or some of your fortified cereals, make sure you're getting those in on a consistent basis so you're getting enough of those key micronutrients. And then other options, that some of these sports drink companies provide, right? That one, give you water, because that's the main base of what it is. But then two, they're flavored. So if things flavored, they taste better, typically makes you want to drink them. Then sometimes plain water just doesn't taste good. So it may not be the most attractive thing to grab, which is why the flavorful, sweeter things taste better, which more athletes gravitate towards those. But this Propel and Gatorade Zero, right? They're going to have electrolytes in them as well. So not only are you getting the benefit of drinking the fluid, which is the water that's in the drink, but you're getting those electrolytes, which are going to help with your rehydration. And since athletes typically train, depending on the year, it could be 30 minutes a day, it could be 2 to 4 hours a day, right? You're probably going to be sweating a lot. If you're sweating a lot, you're going to lose a lot of fluid. And to rapidly replenish that fluid you lost, you definitely need to be getting in some type of salt, sodium, or in this case, electrolytes to rehydrate you quicker, to get you back to that normal body weight for the next day of activity. Or maybe you have activity in the morning and then later in the day, and you need to replenish that so you can get back to normal body weight so that you're feeling as great and as good as you can going into that second half of your day of exercise or training. So again, those are key things that you can have pretty much any time of the day. You're not going to be a huge detriment at all. All right, now we go over to the left side and we're thinking about sports drinks. So sports drinks break down to 3 different things. It's going to give you fluid, it's going to give you electrolytes, and it's going to give you quick sugars, right? The ability to take in quick sugars around your activity, they break down and digest very quickly, which is what we want. We don't want something that's going to break down slow, digest slow, which could cause us to make it slow, sluggish, heavy, sloshing feeling. Things that physically won't make you feel good, which then can affect you mentally, which then can affect you in your specific sports play. Again, lift, training, or a game or event. Now, you can see I have all these different companies that are out there. Gatorade's probably the biggest one, Powerade's second, and then you kind of have that fight for third with Body Armor, and then also with BioSteel. Now, the big difference between a lot of these, some are going to contain, all the electrolytes. They might have magnesium, calcium, potassium, sodium. Some may just have sodium, potassium. The amounts may be slightly a little bit different for product to product. A lot of times it comes down to just the preference of the taste, the texture, and just in general, they may be just dedicated to one brand. Like I'm a Gatorade guy. I love Gatorade. Or my school's Powerade. I like Gatorade, but my school gives me Powerade as part of the options that are provided within the fridges. So that's what I'm going to drink to utilize as my hydration option. Now, there's different levels of Gatorade. You have regular Gatorade, which has the most sugar. You have G2, which is going to be half the sugar. And then you have G0, which has no sugar. There's other derivatives off of that. There's going to be Gatorade Endurance, which typically has a little bit higher carbohydrates or sugar and a little bit higher sodium content. You also have things like Gator Light. So Gator Light packets now are made into a ready-to-drink Gator Light drinkable beverage, which also will have probably all the electrolytes that I mentioned earlier, and then a little bit higher sodium content. And these are just kind of branches off of regular Gatorade, For those kids who are super heavy sweaters that need a higher sodium amount, so one, they can replenish that fluid quicker to get back to that normal body weight. And then two, it's going to give you that little bit of extra carbohydrates to provide you the energy you need, because if you're training an hour and 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours, longer than 2 hours, right? If we don't get some type of carbohydrate in there to maintain our energy levels, we're going to have that probably big dip off where we might start feeling tired and exhausted during the second half of our training. We want to try to maximize what we're drinking and eating before and during the training. So that way, if we're starting to get a little bit tired, we're having an intervention with the food or the drink. So even if we have a little bit of dip, right, the nutrients get in there, get absorbed, and we can pick back up and have a consistent second half of our training session or a game or a lift or whatever it specifically may be, to allow us to maximize and give as much as we can. The other component you got to think about is these are going to be really good options when it's extremely hot or humid out. When the heat around us in our environment goes up, our body temperature is going to go up. And for us to be able to cool our body down, our body is going to sweat to evaporate and get rid of that heat from our body to control our internal body temperature. So these drinks, especially having these drinks available cold, ice cold, because when our body temperature is going up, we want to make sure we're taking in cold beverages, whether it's during that training session or directly after that training session, to get the body temperature back down to its normal temp. So that way we can start that recovery process. It's going to be very challenging to do that if we keep this elevated high body temperature, because again, a couple degrees too high, right, can lead to a lot of those heat-related illnesses, heat stroke. And then again, we don't want to get to the worst case scenario, which if you're not taking any action with your hydration, when you're super hot and you're getting more and more dehydrated, there is that component where casualties have happened in athletics before, which we don't want to ever get to that specific extent. Now, you see I put on there hour 15, hour and 30 minutes. If you're training that long, that's where regular Gatorade, Gatorade Light, Gatorade Endurance, those are good options to use. If you're training maybe 45 minutes to an hour, right, and it's still an intense 45 minutes to an hour, probably a G2 is going to be a better option, right? It has half the sugar. You're not going to need as much because you're not training as long. And then if we're doing something that we're not doing any training, or maybe we're doing some light shooting or light passing or whatever your sport specifically does, again, the waters, the G0s, the Propels, they still have electrolytes, they still have fluids, but we're not going to have all this excess extra sugar that we're going to be taking down. Now, again, a lot of these sports drinks and a lot of these juices and teas will get a bad rap, just specifically because they have a lot of excess sugar. Now, taking a lot of excess sugar when the body doesn't need to utilize it or isn't going to be important, right, can be pro-inflammatory, right? It can reduce the recovery process. It can cause possibly or occur more inflammation. But if we're using these quick and simple sugars during the right specific periods of time, when we're training long bouts of time, that's when they're going to be really beneficial and have a positive effect on us. So you got to be able to differentiate the two of those things to know during this period of time of training 2 hours, I need to have this Gatorade because of X, Y, and Z, and it's going to have this benefit. But if I'm on a Saturday and I'm doing absolutely nothing, right, I don't need to be guzzling down 8 Gatorades when I don't have any activity going on. I should probably switch to a different option that's low sugar, no sugar, a milk, a water, something like that for that example, because this is that time or period of time where now I'm trying to get my body to recover, and just loading up on added sugars, again, not natural sugars, added sugars may not be the best possible thing for my body to recover in the way that it needs to. Again, any questions or concerns, leave a comment. All my contact information is down in the bio. If anybody's interested in nutrition services, my link is in the bio there, my website, my contact information. Please hit me up. Always want to help athletes out. That's part of what I do, is part of my passion. And I hope you guys learned something today. Thank you.